A very good morning to you, and thank you so much for keeping it to NBS Television. This is the Morning Breeze, and it's time for the topical discussion. Our conversations on Thursdays directly target the economy, and today we're looking at Uganda's one of the leading foreign exchange earners, and that is tourism. Having been battered during the COVID-19 times, it has slowly but surely been able to recover and get back to its normal fares like it was during or before COVID-19 time. And today our focus is going to be on MICE. We've heard about MICE for a long period of time, simply meetings, incentives, conferences, and events. And that's a sector globally that is, as of 2024, anticipated, which we're already in, was anticipated to hit more than $1 trillion in value, with a compounded annual growth rate of more than 7%, or many have actually attributed it to be about 9%. When we drop it down to Africa's contribution of or what Africa partakes of that, I don't know whether it is more than 10%. Then we break it even down further to East Africa and then Uganda. It would be a totally different conversation with the experts that I am having. But what exactly is it that we need to be paying attention to for us to enhance our potential? We've had various events already that have happened in this year. We had CISPOC, the Speakers Conference coming through. We had the Non-Aligned Movement. We had the G77 plus China Summit. We have so many others that will be coming through. But where exactly do we need to look to make sure that we can be able to partake of this huge market that is continuously growing? And of course, I will definitely have the panel of experts to be taking on this conversation with me. In studio already is Mr. Peter Mwanja, who is in the tourism sector, but not only there, also paying a lot of attention to the MICE industry. Mr. Mwanja, it's a very good morning from me to you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Good morning to our viewers and listeners.
A pleasure having you. And of course, we also expect an economist in Dr. Walugembe, who will be joining us at a later stage. And as well, of course, when you talk about tourism, another name that is very, very common, we will be having at a later stage coming through on the Morning Breeze, and that is Mr. Amos Wekesa, to break this conversation a little further. But of course, I'll start off with you, Peter. The word MICE over the times has come through quite a lot, especially when we're referring to the tourism sector and the potential. If you just break it down for someone who is not in that sector, how would you simplify it?
Well, MICE, first of all, is part of tourism. We've got two sections of tourism. We've got the leisure tourism, what everybody knows, where you go to the parks and all of that. And then there's the business tourism. Business tourism is where MICE falls. And for those that are new to MICE, MICE is meetings, incentives, conferences, and events. Now, the big thing here is the events and the conferences. That's what people will understand. And that's the gathering of large amounts of people for 2-3 days to exchange ideas, network, and make business. But also we've got a crucial one that is incentives. Now, incentives in the MICE is really about saying thank you to people. You say thank you to your workers, you say thank you to your customers by giving them exclusive travel. So incentive travel is exclusive travel that you and I cannot afford on our own. I'll take you out and give you a treat with your better half or with your next of kin, and give you something that you will never ever be able to get even if you saved for 100 years. So that really is the MICE that we talk about. And Uganda has really developed and grown into MICE starting about 2018. We did not really understand what it was, and we just practiced. We hosted events, we hosted meetings, but the real idea had not come through. So now it's coming to the forefront, and it's actually going to be the biggest earner of Forex in this country.
In the country. Yeah. And I love that it's just recent. It may seem recent, but at least we are on the track. What are the key areas, first of all, to pay attention to? Because when you talk about meetings, you're talking about conferences and events, my first thought goes to the infrastructure. And most recently, of course, we've been told about the convention center at Munyonyo, which also hosted the Nana Line movement and G77. Do we have that in place? And how much of infrastructure should we be thinking about if we are having a conversation on MICE?
Well, from about 2019, our cry to the government, because they have the money, was that we needed venues. Venues is what we need to hold a successful event.
Yeah.
We want to avoid having to put tents and then they fall, or it rains and, you know, the area is stampeded. So venue is the key infrastructure that we need. Now we look at, say, the convention center that can have at least 3,000 people in one sitting. We've got, that's the Munyonyo one. We've got Chigo that can sit maybe 500. We've got Serena that has a big capacity. So we're not doing badly right now in terms of venues for conferences. We need to improve on venues for sports, because sports is a very big thing. We need to improve on venues and trails for pilgrimages. So that's the kind of infrastructure we need. You know, we need to leverage on shortcomings elsewhere. We now find that Israel has closed down, but it's been the hottest spot for pilgrim, especially for Christians.
Religious.
Now, those that still have the interest in coming for pilgrims are looking to Uganda, are looking to Ethiopia, and that's one area that we can take, you know, huge advantage of, at least until they open. And who knows, when they open, we will have captured the entire thing. So those are the things that MICE needs to look out for.
You mentioned two important aspects. Let's start it off from the most previous one, which is the religious aspect. It's a product offering in tourism that we haven't taken quite a lot of attention to, and yet we have lived experiences. For example, when you talk about the Uganda Martyrs, if you tracked their lineages, you definitely can be able to find their family members, whether it's fourth generation or whatever it is. What are we not doing in that regard, in that context? Even as Uganda, being very different from many other African countries, hosting 3 popes, which is not a very common phenomena worldwide.
Well, we have not taken it very seriously because it's a religious thing. People do not think there's revenue to be made there.
Let's just leave people to believe in their God and their faith.
Yes, exactly. And that doesn't bring out the value of our country as a destination. Right now, if you started to track the origin of the martyrs, there's a minor basilica in Munyonyo that has been gifted to us by the Polish government. If you developed a trail, and I'm sure government and private sector are working together to do that, if we develop that trail from Munyonyo to Namgongo, and you can have 100 pilgrims a day walking through that trail, that's a lot of positioning for this country. It's a lot of revenue. It's a lot of jobs being created through the guiding and through the improvement of infrastructure. So religious tourism, I think, now is a very key thing that we need to look at.
Is it about the cost to be able to establish, or is it about the thinking, the mindset, and the development of what exactly we need in those spots, especially when we're talking about religious tourism? It's
got a lot to do with the mindset, because we are a Christian country, largely. We think that we know it all, and we wait for our kids to go to school, and then the buses will bring those kids.
For their tours.
Yes.
The trips.
That's the mindset that we need to change. If we did that, then there would be a lot of pressure on the government, there will be pressure on the Ministry of Tourism to actually grow it. And that's the direction that we're now taking.
Okay. And now, you talked about sports tourism. We are in the Olympics time. We've won some medals, we're celebrating, but some people think that we've not invested enough to celebrate what we have, although it doesn't take away the celebration. When you talk about high altitude training centers, they're not there. Let's talk about areas where so many other sporting activities can actually be participated in or trained. We don't have that much in the country. Where is the problem? Yet we're winning medals.
It comes back to infrastructure. if we do not develop infrastructure, especially in that area, we're not going anywhere. But you see, baby steps are coming. I've seen there's the Rwenzori Marathon happening sometime this year.
Yeah.
And I think Amos is part of the brains behind it. It is small baby steps like that that are going to show everybody that it can work. Mm-hmm. When the MTN started their marathon, we didn't know that they would do anything with it. But now when they announce, they get sold out. The Rwenzori Marathon is getting sold out. If we do the same for Kapchora, we do the same for Bwindi because of altitude, it's going to grow. There's a lot of talent in this country. It's untapped. But as long as we don't have the infrastructure again, we will not be able to tap into it. So what the gold medals and silvers are doing for us, they're marketing the country. And everybody now seems to understand that there's talent in the country, but they cannot come to see it. We all sit back and wait in France to then see that Uganda has talent. And that's where now we need to go. We develop the talent, we skill the people, and we have the infrastructure.
Okay. Skill is another aspect that you've actually mentioned, and at a much later stage, we'll be joined by Amos Wekesa. How do we encompass skill in the MICE sector? Because if I have my venue and I am able to establish it, back in the day you were talking about tents, I just get my tents, have my PA system. I think I'm an events organizer, ain't I?
Yeah. So really, if we need to understand MICE, every single sector in this country is a MICE sector. Everyone, every job.
Okay.
So you'll find that MICE, on one event, you can employ up to 1,000 people for just one event. Because look, you're getting the IT guys, you're getting the guys who construct the booths, you're getting the speakers, you're getting the delegates, everybody, the restaurants are cooking, the fuel. There's not a single unit of life that does not come through MICE. So what are we saying now? That we need to get professional people in that space. We need to get conference organizers, for starters, who are professional, that can plan an event or a conference from the planning to the execution and to the after.
Okay.
You need events managers. You need destination. You know, MICE has 5 sections. The first one is the professional conference organizer. That one looks after the entire event. You get this company, entrust it with your event, and they plan with you all through the process. And then you have the second one, who's the destination manager. This is the guy who knows everything about the destination you are. He will help you to find the right venue. He'll help you to find the right restaurants. He'll help you to find which roads and mark out your routes.
Okay.
So then you come to the events organizer. This is the guy now who will come with that infrastructure, the tents or the microphones, everything in there. Then you have the guys who do the service.
The various services.
The various services. So like the ushering, all of that is part of MICE. Now, if the usher destroys your event by even not dressing appropriately, the keynote speaker won't make effect because the first
They're
impression...
already disturbed.
Now, if you train the MICE personnel, if you skill the people who are practicing MICE, you will have skilled the entire country. The guy who grows the chips that is coming to feed the people in the conferences, if they know the quality that is required at a conference, the whole experience is going to be seamless.
Do we have the skilling centers, for example? Because I am now looking at the forward-backward linkages. Yeah. I need professional ushers. Do I have a center? Who is going to train? What kind of skills are you imparting?
There is a private sector association called UACI, the USCII, Uganda Association of Conference and Incentive Industry. That's the leading association in the private sector that's trying to bring together everybody and lobbying the government and all of that to make sure that we have good skill and were trained. And there's a huge budget for it. And then under the Ministry of Tourism and under the Uganda Tourism Board, they've set up a special department called the Uganda Convention Bureau. Now the Uganda Convention Bureau and the UAKI are working together to make sure that we have programs that will train. But there's also professional courses that those who are really interested in MICE are taking. And once you start that process, today we've got about 5 or 6 individuals who have taken up those courses. And we're sure that now Uganda can host with professionalism all sorts of events with just those few. But we need the entire section to be upgraded.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter Mwanja. For those who are joining us as a MICE expert, but also in the tourism sector, as we break down this huge global space, the MICE space, and how Uganda can actually harness a potential to be able to take part and take a portion of that huge market. Let me now get joined by Mr. John Walugembe, who is joining us from South Africa. Mr. John Walugembe, when we are talking about the economy, when we're talking about MICE sector, we're not only looking at who we are hosting and what events there are, we're also looking at the ripple effect on the economy. Break that down for us.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, when tourists come to attend conventions, events, they bring much needed foreign exchange. It's very easy because it's one export where the person you're exporting to is the one who comes. You don't have to be the one to go in order to export. So I think that that is very easy money in terms of foreign exchange receipts. Then we've talked about the potential that it has in terms of employment. And we are talking about the entire value chain, from the farmer to the transporter, to the events organizer, to the manufacturer. So it benefits a range of people across diverse value chains. If you look at agriculture, for instance, you find that the food that they take in the event actually is sourced from the farmer. And then the other thing is that MICE can help improve our infrastructure. And every time you have an event, you invest in infrastructure. Every time you have major events, you invest in infrastructure. And I'm not just talking about the road network. I'm talking about, for instance, rail. Because we should, at some point, I think we should have a rail network that helps our tourists move seamlessly. We should also, if you look at the issue of, for instance, of electricity, I think for Uganda, it's a plus. We don't have blackouts, which you have in very many other economies. So how can we leverage that? The MICE sector can also improve our skill levels because, as Mr. Mwanje mentioned, you need various professionals along the value chain. So you have to build that capacity. So there's a lot of potential, but I think that challenge we have in Uganda is that we are not focused on marketing MICE. I think some of the events we hold are, in many instances, accidental. Accidental, not meaning that we are unready, but we, once the event comes, we prepare, we host, and then that's it. I'll give you an illustration. If you look at religious tourism, for starters, we can do a lot to leverage the Namgongo and the Ugandan matters. But we can also have people coming for other religious pilgrimages. If you look at Nigeria, the people who go there, for instance, to visit different churches and so on, that is very important for them in terms of tourism receipts. So I think we can, for me, UTB says they have a convention, they have called it a convention unit. They need to have one specific focused on religious tourism because it's an easy win. Because the other one is sports. But with sports, we are not doing very well in terms of the facilities. Of course, government investing resources to build stadia, for instance, for AFCON. But I think we can do more in other disciplines. We can do more in table tennis, we can do in badminton and so on. And then we can also I've talked about religious tourism. I've talked about sports. You know, we can also look at other professional events. For instance, accountants hold their conventions, lawyers hold their conventions, nurses hold their conventions. What can we do to ensure that all these professionals start to choose Uganda as a preferred destination? I would say that in Africa now, I would say that one of the leading venues for events is Rwanda. And what have they done?
All right. I think we will definitely be getting back to Mr. John Walugembe. Not too long from now, we did lose him there. We do apologize about that technical glitch, but we'll definitely be getting back. Right here, Mr. Mwanja, what I will be looking at is the role of the private sector. Because many a times when we're looking at these events, because they're huge events and they're directly probably intergovernmental kind of conversations, we're thinking, oh, government will actually be able to take advantage or will be able to prepare for everything. Where is the role of the private sector in ensuring that we develop a well-equipped, facilitated MICE sector in the country?
Well, you've heard of the phrase that tourism is government-led and private sector-driven. So there's certainly got to be a synergy. There's got to be a collaboration. Now, when we're attracting big events like conventions of accountants or NAM, for example, blood transfusion, the private sector will go and do the bid. But they'll do these events are for bidding, by the way. So somebody like my company or Uganda Tourism Board will go and do a bid. And then that bid will want to evaluate you and understand that the country, because you're representing Uganda, the country can actually host that event successfully. And so they'll ask you for things like a bond.
Yes.
They could ask for a $5 million bond. Not one single company here can
do that.
So then you run to government and you say, I am at this stage, but there's a bond needed, and since we're selling Uganda, can we do it? And then if the government buys into it, you can proceed. So it's got to be a synergy, and that's how we're doing it.
Okay.
Luckily, some events come to us because an organization has chosen Uganda by themselves. And then they come here and look for us to organize it. But the huge ones, you will need a prime minister, a president, or a minister, for that matter, to go and pitch for it. You've seen how Rwanda is doing very well with events because their leadership goes out of the way and bids for those things and convinces them. So the private sector really is the one that takes the charge on the ground. They're the boots on the ground. The government is the one that sources.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as we do move, because there is huge potential here, you talked about our capacity in terms of maybe some of the infrastructure that has come through. But I want to believe that it goes just beyond that. The capacity of, I have the venue, but there is a lot more that we need to be able to look at. I am looking at accommodation in this case. If you have an event that's taking, for example, 5,000 people and they all need probably a 3-star upwards, are they able to get that? If we are talking about developing our Airbnb, is it even available? Does it meet the standards? Because most of the times it is issues of standard and quality that come through. Do we have that?
First, I think I'll give you some numbers here. In Africa, Uganda is ranked number 6 in hosting events and conferences. And it's behind South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and I think Morocco. And Kampala is ranked number 4. So we're not at a very bad stage. We're only striving to get to number 1, which maybe we will. Do we have the space? Yes. The eye-opener was CHOGM. I think that was 2007, when everybody realized there was big business to be made. And so many hotels and guest houses sprang up. Today, you have more than 10,000 beds in Jinja, Entebbe, Kampala. So that's not the problem. The problem has been, can we sit 3,000 guests in one
space?
And now we do. At least we have one, and it's a monopoly, yes, but it takes us somewhere. Because I know that by next year, May, Munyonyo will have another 3,000 square meters of exhibition space. That's going to take away the challenge of having to rent a piece of grass, a pitch, to do exhibitions. And that, boasts the image of our country. Now, everybody is wanting to come to Uganda to see the convention center.
Yes.
So we're at a good stage. And yes, we have the capacity. It's now the skilling that,
important.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Peter Mwanja, we need to take a very short commercial break, but when we do return, we will look at much more in line with moving forward. What are we looking at? What more needs to be done of what we have actually already done to attract more and more of these events and meetings in the country? Let's get back. All right, a very good morning to you, and thank you so much for keeping it right here. You're still watching The Morning Breeze, and this is the topical discussion as we take you through the conversation on the maize sector, a huge one that is continuously developing, and how Uganda can harness its potential to take advantage of the maize sector. And with me in studio is Peter Mwanja, a maize expert, but also in the tourism sector. And also I do have Mr. John Walugembe, who is joining us live from South Africa, an economist, and also looking at the potential for the country of these events. John, I want to come back to you. Sorry, we lost you along the way, but we were still having a conversation on the ripple effect of these events and conferences onto the economy. And in most cases, for events as such, the conversation that comes through is, where does the common man, Muntu Wawansi as it is said, benefit from such?
Okay, so the common man benefits through having a strong economy. I said that when the country gets foreign exchange, that is very important for a balance of payments and helps keep our economy strong, an economy that creates jobs for ordinary people. But the common man also benefits because they indirectly supply their goods and services to these visitors. They may not do it directly, obviously, but they ultimately benefit. I gave the example of farmers. I gave the example of people that transport the visitors. I gave people that deal in arts and crafts that sell their merchandise to these visitors. So I talked about people with hotels, where some of these visitors would stay. It's true that they might look for the large convention venues to stay initially, but afterwards, many of them would choose to stay longer in order to tour around and so on. And in that case, they would look for the 3-star and the 2-star hotels. So Ugandans need to understand, and I think we also need to appreciate that we all benefit. But that said, there are also things we need to improve. Yes, we have our infrastructure, but you find that some visitors get stuck in traffic jams, for instance, during rush hours and so on. And I think this is something we need to address. How can we create a part of the city where visitors can reach their venues seamlessly? And the southern bus, the express highway to the airport are all part of this. But what more can we do? I already talked about the possibility of having a light rail connection directly from the airport, so that it's cheaper for the visitors, it's faster, and it's more convenient. So what can we do in terms of infrastructure to ensure that we better position ourselves? Thirdly, what offers because we are competing, Uganda competes against other venues. When someone is choosing, where should I take my venue? They also need to look at why should I take my event to Uganda? And I think we need to ask ourselves that question. And as giving the illustration of Rwanda that sometimes offers free venues, but it calculates and says, okay, we are giving a free venue, yes, but these people are going to spend in our economy, they are going to spend money in our hotels, they are going to, so those are some of the offerings. The way we sit down and create incentives for investors, we to investors, rather incentives for people in this my sector, particularly the organizers, So that's what I'm saying, that we need to understand the others, and I'll challenge Uganda Tourism Board to understand the Rwanda, to understand the Nairobi. Yes, Nairobi is lagging behind increasingly, but we can still study them. We can study Cape Town because it's one of the leading destinations. We can study Cairo. We can study Marrakesh in Morocco. These are the places that we need to emulate, because you cannot start on a journey when you don't have a mentor. So I would request that UTB tries to learn and benchmark some of these locations so that they can be able to design better products. And I need to lay emphasis, as I mentioned, on issues of religious tourism. I think this is an area that's underexploited. We are, at the moment, the single product we are selling is the Mugongo, but I think we can do more. We need to create stories around this. The matters is one. What else can we create? We have one of our famous presidents, Idi Amin, irrespective of his political views, is a tour. I would look at it as a tourist attraction. He's well known all over the world. So how can we sell a product around that? How can we sell a product around that? So I think there's need for innovation, and there's need for involvement of the private sector in this regard.
And I will definitely be getting back to you as we get to conclude this conversation. Peter, like you clearly said, mice cannot be dissected or taken away from the tourism sector. And I'm thinking about the diversification of the product offerings, because we've over the time paid a lot of attention to the flora and fauna. We're looking at the lakes, the animals, but we have the food aspect to it, the culinary aspect to it. We have, when I get to look at Uganda and our culture, every space in Uganda actually has a totally different offering to be able to take through. Are we looking at expanding in those areas as well?
When you look at the statistics of tourism globally, 40% of world tourism is culture. Mm-hmm. So culture brings people into our countries. Culture brings people to our food. They come to see how we live differently. So it's also another place that we haven't explored. But if we, for example, we've got the Kasubi tombs. It's a heritage site, but it's been closed for a while. A lot of people want to come and see how our kings are preserved, how they lived, how they ate, because it's unique.
Yes.
The schools are all doing that all the time. It's one area that is, the other area that we're overlooking, and that's huge potential for this country, is the nightlife. Mm-hmm. We get so many buses from Rwanda every weekend coming for nightlife. We get a lot of flights coming in for nightlife from Kenya.
Is it that vibrant?
Very vibrant. Uganda is known for nightlife, but we don't market it. I was speaking to a professor from the US, I think it was Monday, and he gave us, he's a tourism professor, he gave us his own example and said he's been in the country visiting for 1 month, and he's spent 80% of his budget, his travel budget, on nightlife in Kampala.
Interesting.
Imagine how many more do that. So if you leverage on the other sectors and not just think of the gorilla, and you empower, you give the people with restaurants and eateries and bars good working environment and policy, that alone is a huge attraction. When we host conferences in this country, we've got what we call pre and post events.
Exactly.
I'll come in a day or two before, I want to see the country I've never been to. And after, I want to enjoy the nightlife. I want to go to the parks. So we've got to look at all.
But sometimes the complaints that have been in some of these conferences that I've actually as well attended is there is no room left for that. You have a 3-day conference, it's entirely through it, and probably there is no synergy between the conference organizers and the government, and that particularly looking at the tourism board. And you're not even given the time to be able to market or to give the people the space. Say if it's a 3-day conference, the 3rd day is going to be a half day because you want to leave people to go and explore the country. Why not?
There's a new trend we're developing. And I think through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Tourism and the UTB, there's an annual conference now that we have. It's on its 3rd leg coming to Uganda. It's called the 3rd Uganda Kenya Coast Tourism Conference. It's purely a conference for people in tourism to come and meet in one destination, see it, understand it, and make partnerships. Now, on this particular conference, when it's in Kenya, we take Ugandans for 10 days. They have 2 days conference. The rest of the 8 days, they're exploring and they're being shown what Mombasa has to offer. Same happens in Uganda. When they come, we give them 12 days. 2 days conference, 1 day B2B and networking, and the rest they're exploring. That's the kind of thing that we want to do, but we're doing it for people in tourism. The people in business obviously cannot afford the luxury
of all the time.
But as you rightly said, give them half a day and show them one spot. Take them to the golf course and tell them this is a golfing day. Take them to the nightlife in the evening. Take them to the cultural sites, religious sites. Then you improve the face and the image of the destination. And that's where we're now trying to go. And that's how UAKI and UCB are trying to professionalize everything and put some oomph, some vibe in the job.
Yeah.
And then eventually you'll see that we shall rank as a country.
Okay, we'll be waiting for that definitely, because you are giving very good ideas, but the practicality is where the conversation or the problem always comes in. Our time is fast spent. John, I want to get back to you on one pressing issue is, yes, Uganda is the capital city. I mean, Kampala is the capital city of Uganda, but there's several other cities across the country. And how then do we get to sell the other parts of Uganda away from just Kampala, that every conference, every event, every meeting will actually be here? Is that a conversation that seems too big for the country right now as we're still positioning?
Thank you, Mildred. Sorry. Thank you, Mildred. First of all, that we need to position our cities differently from Kampala. Now, the challenge is that if every city is offering what Kampala is offering, then that creates a problem. So what is unique in Gulu, and how can we position that? What is unique, for instance, in Mbale? Can we sell Malewa? Can we take people through the Mbale Festival? Now we have the Rwenzori Marathon. So I think what we can do is to position our districts differently from each other. Every district must offer something unique from a cultural perspective. And then the other issue we need to look at is the night economy, because the challenge we have is that you have very many MSMEs who will work until 6 p.m. Because for them, they want to operate through the normal working day. They forget that when tourists come during the day, they are engaged in meetings. So in the night is when they spend. So it means we also need to orient our business people that you can operate 24 hours. You can have one staff come morning and someone else take over. But the challenge we have is that sometimes you want to have a few businesses operating, the bars, the restaurants, and so on. All the other businesses have closed, which is a pity. So that's something we need to look at. And then also as we're looking at the night economy, and not just in Kampala, but across the country, we need to look at what are we selling. Kabalagala used to be a hotspot. I don't think it's anymore, because I now see very many traffic lights and so on. So if someone has come to Kampala and they're look at the nightlife. What are we exactly promoting there? And I think we need a strategy on the night economy, not just the nightlife, by the way, but the night economy as a whole. And because especially up country, you find that by 9, some places are completely closed. In some districts, if you're there, by 9 p.m., everything has come to a standstill. So these kinds of districts really cannot benefit from the MICE sector until they change their mindset and are able to create an offering 24 hours. I think that's for me very good. Then the other issue is that some of the business people we harass, like hawkers, people who offer street food and so on. These are in fact very attractive for these tourists who come for these events.
Okay.
Because after I've been to the convention center and I also want to be able to eat some good local food, what we call street food. If you go to India, this is a very serious delicacy. If you go to Thailand, so we need to also know that, okay, as we are cleaning up the cities, as we are running after hawkers and so on, at some point we need to allow them in, because this is also an attraction for the tourists. And then what Mr. Mwanja mentioned around linkages is very, very important. If you look at the statistics, some of the tourists don't come directly to Uganda. Sometimes they come through Kenya, sometimes they come through Rwanda. So how can you collaborate with tourism providers in those countries to ensure that you offer a complete package? And some of these tourists may not even reach Kampala. And that's where, because a tourist that visits Rwanda can visit Kisoro, can visit Kabale, and go back. A tourist that visits Western Kenya can be able to visit Mbale, can be able to visit Busia or Soroti and go back. So I think for me, the issue of linkages, as you promote tourism in these far-flung districts from Kampala, we need to change our mindset. We need to know that a tourist can come and stop there and not visit Kampala, and it's okay. And that's where the issue of linkages is extremely important. I also need to mention, Mildred, that the other challenge I see with our country is that we speak the time. We need to improve infrastructure. We need to do MICE. We need to do this, but the practice becomes a problem. Year 1, year 2, and I want to challenge you, TB, really, that we want to see some action, really, because apart from setting up committees, units, departments, we want to see the action. We want to see 3rd June being celebrated differently, having delegations from different countries, those delegations being taken care of specially, those delegations having their special accommodation, those delegations after the Matter Day celebration, being able to engage in tourism activities around the country. Let's remove the chaos around the event. Let's make sure that it's more organized and so on and so forth. So for me, I would challenge UTB, not just UTB, but all the other agencies that are concerned, including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because their mandate now, their cardinal mandate is commercial diplomacy, which includes Uganda as an event and tourism destination. So I think if there's greater cooperation there, we should be able to see some positive results.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Walugeme. Maybe I'll give you a few minutes, because we're wrapping this up, to give us your parting shots on this sector and the future that it holds in Uganda.
My view is that this is very easy money. There's money that's really easy. It comes to you. There are no non-tariff barriers. Other countries can't say you don't have standards. You don't have. It's the tourist that determines where to go. The standard is in his head. So I think we need to really look at this sector very serious, especially the MICE sector. We need to have very many convention centers, not just the big ones. We've been focusing on the big ones, but even smaller convention centers that are welcome. In Kampala, we don't have places for venue. We have places for every event has to be in a hotel. So these are things that we need to look at more seriously, because here, if you are not in a hotel, you can't really hold an event. So we need to encourage the private sector to invest, not just for tourists, but also locally, because very many events cannot be held here for that purpose, because we've not invested. Then, as I mentioned, as I close, we also need to lay emphasis on the night economy as a whole, not just the nightlife, but the night economy. We should have a strategy for that. We should have people who make sure that it's run right and it's done right, among others. And finally, let's encourage our people to set up businesses, because you cannot benefit from MICE if you don't have businesses to offer a good and a service. So by encouraging people to set up small businesses, by encouraging them to do things right, then you are more likely to see the country benefit from this very important sector.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. John Walugembe, for coming to us live from South Africa and sharing your thoughts on our conversation. A good morning to you from Uganda. And of course, I am still with Mr. Peter Mwanja as we get to conclude this conversation. And like we said, we definitely loop it with tourism. As we conclude and you give your parting shots, there is one thing that comes in mind, the expense. Even for tourism, where we've said we want to promote domestic tourism, first of all. Let Ugandans get to appreciate what we have. But when we think about the pricings, first of all, you're pricing in foreign currency, and it is exorbitant. And the Ugandan thinks, I would rather take a flight to a different country where it seems a little bit cheaper than having to spend in the country.
You're getting me to a very nasty point there, because well, Uganda is a very expensive country. Anyone who visits Uganda will tell you it's expensive. Probably it's because the policies are not enabling the business people. Okay. Probably it's because access to finance or finance itself is very expensive.
So the incentive aspect comes through.
As long as we remain an expensive destination, we shall have all the good wow products, but we will not make the money. But you see, we've got to live with it. If the government can put some deliberate, you know, the hoteliers come and tell us they're paying, I think, 17 different taxes just to have their hotel running. Maybe that is something that hits on the price, to me, the final consumer. But there are places that we can visit as Ugandans. And like Mr. Walugembe was saying, we can improve on those facilities. We've got the Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria is a huge opportunity. If we can have people invest on water transport, Ugandans would love it, and it's cheap. If we can have people invest in properties on islands, that's a very huge boost for domestic tourism. And that's what's going to make drastic change, so that people stop going to Dubai. They can go to an island with white sands and have the same experience, and not spend 6 hours on the road, but having fun on the lake in a safe boat or a marine vessel. I think it's the right way to go now, as we fight to boost and enhance and increase domestic tourism.
Okay. Yeah. Your final parting shots on the MICE sector that we're all looking at. Government these days, while speaking about anything tourism, they will definitely talk about the potential of MICE.
I'll speak about MICE until the cocks and chickens come home. I think that everybody has a space in MICE. Okay. Everybody has something to do in MICE, and everybody can earn a lot of money from MICE. So, fellow Ugandans and those that are watching, let's embrace MICE. It's the future, and it will be the biggest income earner for this country for many years to come.
I love the statement that everybody can earn from MICE. It's just about how you strategize and plan for which particular portion or area in the MICE that you want to be. All right, Peter, it's been a pleasure, and definitely this is a conversation that we'll continue with over the time. But thank you so much for sparing your time to be with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And a pleasure to you, our viewer. Thank you so much for joining in the conversation. The sector is here. It is huge, a very huge potential. And like Peter said, how are you strategizing yourself to take advantage of that? That is the question that I'll leave with you. I am Mildred Tohaise, and that's all we had time for. Good morning. God bless you.